I'm Jack Regan.
And I'm Bekah.
Today we're here with Principal Bourn from Abington High School. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How was your summer?
Pretty good. Busy. Traveled to Alaska. I've told anyone that's wanted to hear about that, about my trip to Alaska. And then a lot of work here, hiring a lot of new teachers.
That's so cool. Any highlights?
Yeah, so Alaska is just amazing. It's one of those places you could take your camera out and take a picture of anything, and it's amazing. And then as far as the work here in the summer, which is also a big part of the summer, we've added 12 new teaching staff to the high school, which is a lot. I'm really excited about our new folks joining our team here. So that's what I did this summer, is traveled and then hired some folks. So,
did you say that, would you mean that like Alaska is like one of your favorite vacation spots or something? Or?
Yeah, it was high in the running. We had gone to Hawaii as a family, which is really hard to beat and still remains at the top. But some of our memories from Alaska are solid number 2, which is saying something. We've traveled a bunch, so we were really pleased with that trip.
Do you try to travel as much as possible?
Yeah, I think so. We do. We've taken our boys who are now freshmen and junior in high school, kind of everywhere we've gone. A lot of family trips, but we try to take advantage of the time in the summer to go places. So, yeah, we get out and we do what we can. Usually, mostly international travel, but some domestic travel as well.
Yeah. So obviously with COVID, like we've had a lot of, there was like 2 years we really couldn't travel. This year going into the new year, we're going to expect to see any COVID restrictions?
I don't think so, but again, who knows what happens this winter. If you recall, last winter was really, actually, I think mathematically more people were dealing with COVID than the year prior. Good thing that the vaccinations were in place, because people weren't dealing with the same severity of symptoms. But where we stand right now, we're obviously able to do masks off. We have no assigned seating at lunch, no assigned seating, at least for medical purposes, in the classroom. As things pick up in the winter, there may come new guidelines or restrictions, but we just won't know until it happens.
As a principal, like, what was going through your thoughts last winter, like obviously seeing all the crazy stuff go down?
It was just trying to figure out what we needed to do to kind of get through that time. So many kids were out, so many staff were out, and the combination of the two as the semester came to close and grades came to close, just as far as what flexibility people needed to get work in or to have extended deadlines for grades or to just do the best they could with what they have. We really hit a point where we were, I think, 120 students were out in a given day in a school of 560, so it was about a quarter of our kids at the peak were out for multiple days.
That's unreal.
Yep.
What are your overall feelings towards this year?
I have such an optimism and excitement for this year. I think for the reasons we discussed, it was really refreshing to just have lunch, without having to do assigned seats and distancing and masks and all that stuff. So it just feels more like school as I've remembered it. So that's particularly exciting. And I think there's something exciting about having new teachers in the building and seeing how they do and kids meeting some of the new folks that I'm excited to have here. And it's honestly great to see you all after a long summer. Ultimately, we do like working with kids, so it's kind of a boring office job when you're not here, and then it gets exciting, tiresome at times, but exciting when the kids are here. So we're happy to have you back.
Yeah.
What do you think about the new teachers?
So I think really fantastic. They come from a lot of different backgrounds and varieties. Some folks have taught before. For some folks, this will be their first year. We're also really fortunate to have great colleagues and partners that are serving as mentors to these new teachers. So they've been partnered up with someone who's been here. And they're all here because they have the same kind of positive outlook and desire to work with kids and the passion for their subject that is part of our Abington brand. So I'm excited to see how they do. And I think you're going to have some new people that you're going to learn and be like, oh, wow, this new teacher's really amazing. So
yeah. So obviously we have a bunch of new freshmen coming in, and then we also have new teachers. Do you have any advice for new people as a whole?
Yeah, it's always to ask questions. I think we've done a better job over the years, and I detected this from the freshmen today, being comfortable asking questions. There's this fear of I'm going to get lost, and it's expected that you're going to get lost. And so I knew my new folks have learned to ask questions and ask for help.
Yeah.
Are there any new things or events this year or anything like that that's different from last year?
Yeah, there's not anything major, I think, that well, last year we had to explain the shift from our very different schedule during what would have been your freshman year, so before you got here, Bekah. We're using basically the same schedule as last year. Today and tomorrow are different schedules just based on teacher feedback to see everyone 2 days in a row. Probably the biggest shift, and I wouldn't even think it's that big, is we moved our mentor groups to happen at the end of the day on Wave Week Wednesdays. So they won't be on Fridays. So it does mean, and what we're asking folks to do is to try to schedule students and students to ask teachers to schedule them before the mentor group happens. So when it finally comes to mentor group, it's kind of just fitting in odds and ends. That's about the biggest shift. Bridge block staying, mentor group is just shifting when it happens. And what we wanted to do was open up Friday as the day where we can have a mentor, a bridge block.
How long? Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right.
How long will we have for like bridge block like scheduling and stuff?
So I believe it's 27 minutes for mentor group at the end of the day. So it's shorter than it was. But again, you'll meet all 7 periods on a Wave Week day for about 34 minutes. And we're hoping and thinking you can use that period, teachers will use that period to just pull kids in, right? So even though it's a shorter mentor group, there should be fewer scheduling needs.
Yeah.
So kicking back to when you were in high school, where did you go to high school?
I went to Coventry High School in Coventry, Rhode Island.
Okay.
Home of the Okers.
When did you graduate?
1994.
Were you like part of any like clubs or sports or anything?
No, I was pretty much just a person unto myself. I showed up, I did my schoolwork, I went home and played tons of video games, which you guys would laugh at now, but they were awesome in my time. And I was played a little basketball for my town and some church leagues, but not for the school.
What were your interests outside of school?
So I think, definitely I was a basketball kid. Like I loved playing it, I loved watching it. Loved playing sports too. So junior, senior year, I played football, pickup football with my friends, which is actually kind of foolish because you can get really hurt playing football without pads, and we did. But we were 17 and we just kind of laughed it off. So that, and then I, picked up a job my junior, senior year, and that was kind of fun. So it was basically school, work, some sports, and hanging out with friends.
What was your first job?
First job ever was actually a page in the State House in Rhode Island. So working in the legislative body, so the House of Representatives for Rhode Island. They need people to run back and forth and get them copies of this, or go work on that file, or bring me a coffee or whatever. And human gophers, right? We go for this, go for that. So that was my first job. It was pretty neat, and I think if you've chatted with me about my interest in history or government, that's part of where that came from.
Did you like realize when you were like younger that you wanted to be like in like the education career, or no? Yeah,
so it definitely crystallized the my sophomore year in high school. My mother was a lifelong educator and elementary school principal in the town where I went to school. So I was Sue Bourn's son, which means everyone knew me, and I couldn't get away with anything, and not that I would anyway after a point. I had a very charismatic teacher in history my freshman year and again my sophomore year, Mr. Brissett. And I've called him, told him this, so I don't think he minds me saying this, how inspirational he was. And I said, I want to do that. I want to teach history. And I knew going through high school I wanted to study history at college to become a history teacher, and that's what I did.
Are there any specific topics in history you prefer?
All of it. Love all of it. I can get really nerdy and geeky about Japanese history. I love the Tokugawa shogunate and the Meiji Restoration. Okay, right? These are some of my favorite topics. Roman history I love. I spent most of my teaching career teaching United States history, which I particularly enjoy, in World War II. World War I and World War II are some of my favorite topics.
If you could teach any class, a history class that is not in Abington right now, what would you teach?
I would do United States history since September 11th.
Okay.
So it's been 21 years and a pretty busy 21 years.
Did you like expect to become a principal, or were you like thinking of staying in the history?
No, I can't say I had that awareness. I actually remember when I was 27, 28, teaching history. I was reading an article in Education Week's publication about schools, about a principal who was 30. I was like, oh, that's too young. And then I became the assistant principal at Abington when I was 30, and I didn't know. So it was very much a day, a week, a month at a time. I wasn't thinking career goals wise. But after teaching for about 6 or 7 years, I was like, let me try administration. And then Dr. Sullivan, who you might remember, the previous principal, gave me my first admin job as the assistant principal in the old building that's not there anymore.
Where did you teach previously?
So I taught for a year in Maryland right out of college. And then I spent the next 6 years with 1 year off to go to Boston College for a master's degree at Brockton. I taught history at Brockton High School, right next door.
That's cool.
At what point did you realize, like, when you were teaching, like, this is for me? Like, I want to do this?
Right away. I just think it's just, you know, I had my first boss in Maryland says, you're just like a duck in water. And it's like, yeah, it just suits me. I've always loved being in the classroom. It's probably one of the only regrets about being a principal is like, you just have as you mentioned, we were talking before we rolled, you just get a special connection with some of those teachers, and it's really enjoyable to do that with kids. So it's just, you guys are at such a fascinating age, and it is just really fulfilling to help you, help you understand some stuff in history and hopefully get like a passion for what we're teaching about, and if not, just helping you navigate the, challenging 4 years in your life. So.
Yeah. Would you say that this was like your favorite age to teach based on that? Yeah,
I've never worked with any other group. I think littles and elementary are fascinating, right? Middle school, folks that are built for that, great. I just don't think I am one, but maybe I could be. But no, it was high school, potentially like early college would be interesting too.
Do you have any advice for students who maybe struggle with history? Because I know it can be a difficult topic to learn.
Yeah. This isn't his way of advice, but the best analogy I can come up with last year, and it took me a little while, because one thing that's interesting for kids who don't like history in high school, the number of them that find out they wind up liking history later in life, it's a thing. History is like building a net, like a fish, a net to catch fish, but one rope at a time. So world history is one string, United States history is another. You're not catching anything with two strings. The more you live, the more you get exposed to it. The first time you're able to have like a click of a pattern and be like, I've heard of this before, I've seen this, or you can make a wise prediction based on what you do in the past, then I think it clicks. And there's something sublime about history. So for me, sophomore year in high school, I also took a school's trip to Spain, and I touched a Roman aqueduct. I don't know if you're familiar with these from any of your history classes, carry water down from the mountain. Still worked, 2,000 years old. And so to touch a man-made structure that was 2,000 years old just blew my mind. And it was really just cool. Like,
that's crazy.
You could read about it in a book, but when you physically see it and put your hand on it, it's just like, wow, that's crazy. So.
Would you say that like, why would you say that like history is so important?
So there's an inevitability to history, and I think history, if understood correctly, is learning about people, right? Mm-hmm. Why people did a thing. I think I could really go off on this, so I apologize, but when you experience history through a textbook and you turn the page, what that person did next seems inevitable, right? But nobody knew what was going to happen next, right? If Abraham Lincoln could turn the page and say, I shouldn't go see that play, I'm about to get shot in the head, he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
He didn't know. These things happen as they go. So when you try to put yourself into why would people do such a thing at that point in time, it's just fascinating to learn patterns, and you just learn about people and trends, and it's honestly a way of being able to call some shots in the future if you're good at it.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good.
How have your views on education changed since becoming a student versus a teacher than now being in an administrative position?
Yeah. Well, we actually had a workshop yesterday where the presenter, Dr. Bourn, asked us what's our why we do what we do, not what we do. And so my high school experience was vastly different from what you all experience. You have a much more engaging, enriching experience. We were very much told, here's the information you need to memorize. And I always felt that was a massive missed opportunity for me and for a lot of my peers. When I finally went to college, I had a history experience that was very enlightening and very eye-opening, and it was just, wow, why can't we do some of this stuff down at high school? And there's no really reason not to. And that set me off on my path. Like, how can I bring some of the good stuff, you know? How can we make more good stuff happen? And I think that's where I've been comfortable leaving the classroom, because as a principal, you have some agency in helping determine what and how students learn in a more evocative way for their future learning.
Yeah, collaborating is also just a huge part of learning. Being in an administrative position, is there anyone you collaborate with on a daily basis that helps make the school run?
Yes, constantly, everybody, all the time. I had 2 collaborative meetings in the half hour before dismissal today. Having a good team around me, so everybody that works and pays in the school, there are students I'll shoot ideas off of, bounce ideas off of. I work with Mr. McCurtain at the middle school. Miss Casey, who's the new assistant principal, is phenomenal. Pull her in and ask her ideas. Superintendent Schaefer's great. Everybody in this system are great partners for bouncing ideas off of and coming up with plans for. So I don't trust myself to make decisions in a vacuum all the time, and I like other people to just say, am I crazy or does this sound good? So
yeah.
Oh, and Miss Kelleher is like
yeah.
just amazing. So she is a huge person I rely on to for help. So
change is inevitable, but how do you think you deal with change from COVID and now obviously education being completely different than it was before COVID, and then even just now we have, you said 12 new teachers. That's pretty crazy. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's, again, the awareness and the inevitability of change, rather than kind of, you know, shaking your fist in the air about, like, why does things keep just going to happen? So how to be adaptable and how to think about, like, how can I capitalize on what this change is? Are there any opportunities here? You know, what are the risks with this change and how do we mediate them? So it's just more of taking the mindset that things are going to get shifted on you on the quick. Take a deep breath, and then it's an experience thing, not an intelligence thing. It's, all right, we've been in this spot before. What do we know? What don't we know? Just like I was telling you, right? Because this is more what we're trying to prepare you for. How do we deal with it? And get a group of people, right? Like, here's what we're working on. So Superintendent Schaefer, what do you think? You know, Ms. Kelleher, what do you think? Ms. Casey, what do you think? So,
yeah. Well, thank you. I think we're going to do speed round right now.
Get to know you.
Let's do it.
Try to answer these as quick as possible.
All right.
You ready?
Yep.
All right, your favorite color?
Green.
Favorite movie?
Oh, that's impossible. So that's asking me to pick. So I'll answer it this way. I'm going to say the movie Aliens, but I have about 1,000 favorite movies.
Favorite book?
I would say it's a tie between the novelization of Dune and the Game of Thrones books.
An artist you've been listening to recently?
So who was I listening to today? And that was a podcast. So Tool is probably my latest favorite band.
Best concert?
Best concert, I saw Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. Do you know who they are? Didn't think so. Do you know who Led Zeppelin is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant were 2 members of Led Zeppelin. Okay. They put on a concert in Boston in 1998 when they still had their powers. That was amazing.
One place you want to visit?
Northern Japan.
Okay. Now this one's a little bit of a curveball. So I am part of Project 351, and we have a saying of 3 words to change the world. What are your 3 words?
Take it easy.
Okay, I like it. Well, thank you for being here. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, thank you for the opportunity to come here. If you want to dig deeper into the movies thing, that's a whole nother can of worms and passion of mine, but that's maybe for another time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Abington YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.